Sixth grade, happy Friday. You made it to the end of the first week of live instruction with kids in the classroom. Congratulations. You've also made it to the start of the next chapter. Yesterday you took the big test on the Roman Empire, and we got to about the time of Jesus. Met Caesar Augustus, people like that, a couple of Caesars we know, and now this chapter we're going to talk about how Rome is going to eventually split in half. They're going to decline. It's going to fall apart. We're going to see some of the bad things that come out of that. Let's get started with the introduction. It says, when Constantine defeated his brother-in-law in battle, he became emperor of the Western Roman Empire. At that time, Christians were persecuted in Rome, but Constantine thanked the God of the Christians for his victory. This mosaic shows more than how Constantine looked. The crown on his head represents his power. This reminds us that Constantine granted religious freedom to Christians and made it possible for Christianity to become widespread in the Roman Empire. Constantine's influence was so great that 10 other Roman emperors were named after him. So we're going to spend a decent amount of time talking about Constantine. We're also going to talk about the split of the Roman Empire to the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. We're going to talk about its influence on Christianity, guys. And then as we go through it, every once in a while you'll come across an empire that was named emperor that was named Constantine. But look at that. Just, it's not the same one that this guy that we're going to study is famous for. You can see the Roman arts of the mosaic again, guys, and the things that they work with all those stones to try to create them with it. And then we'll talk, if we think it's good, how Constantine helped Christianity. You got your timeline and the things you're going to talk about today. So as we work our way through this chapter, guys, we're going to split this Roman Empire in half. You can see the Western Roman Empire and then the Eastern Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire is going to get a new name called the Byzantine Empire because of Byzantium. That's the capital city right here. Constantine's going to rename it after himself and call it Constantinople. But if you wonder why do we call it the Byzantine Empire, because its capital used to be Byzantium. Today we've renamed it again. It's called Istanbul. It's the capital of Turkey today. So this is Turkey here, but Turkey also crosses the Black Sea, this little piece of water. You got your timeline down here that you're used to as we work our way through it. Let's get started on lesson 1 today. I'll try to make that a little smaller so we can see a little bit better. Okay, lesson 1, we're talking about the Roman way of life and what makes this culture unique. So we're going to try to learn about, the role of men and women, their philosophies, their religion, what their city looked like, all those things. The Romans have influenced our science, art, architecture, and literature. So something to keep in mind as we work our way through that. Let's get rolling. Many Romans lived in cities throughout the Roman Empire. Like cities and towns of today, Roman cities were centers for culture, business, and government. We know quite a lot about life in places like Rome and Pompeii from studying the archaeological ruins. Even though the Roman Empire was widespread, the heart of the empire was on the Italian peninsula in the city of Rome. You have number 1 in your notes. So, guys, you just saw that map, how huge the empire was. But if you want to know what the Roman Empire was really like, you went to the city of Rome itself. That was the heart of it. That's where their culture, when you would define Roman culture, was all about. Rome was one of the largest cities in the ancient world. By 1 AD, more than 1 million people lived there. People traveled to Rome from every part of the empire. Like many other Roman cities, Rome was carefully planned. It was laid out in a square, number 2 in your notes, with the main streets crossing at right angles. We look at that today, guys, and we are impressed when we find that. Today we do that with cities. Okay? We know the importance of straight angles. But you got to remember, back in the day, a lot of times these things would start really small, and then you just came in at an angle and you just followed the dirt path off that. But quickly you realize the importance of, hey, if we want this city to get bigger, we want to have a system from the start. And so making those things at right angles was really important for organization, for construction, for all those things. The emperor lived in Rome in a splendid palace on top of a hill. At the foot of the hill was the Forum. This was a large open space that served as a marketplace and public square. Your number 4 in your notes. Number 3 in your notes. I gotta scroll this thing so I can see the numbers for you. Sorry. Okay, so we have just like in Greece, guys, we talked about the agora, that open place. Rome has it too. They call it the forum. You come in here, you pull your carts in, you do business, you come in here and you debate. Much like the malls we visit today. So I think that's a great analogy, guys. You think about the malls. You're walking and you can do all your shopping. But what do a lot of people do at the malls? They hang out and talk, don't they? If they buy something, they buy something. But malls, well, at least a couple years ago where you were free to go to malls, it was half a social thing. The forum is the same thing. In the forum marketplace, Romans shopped for goods and luxury items, played games, and chatted with their friends. Temples and other public buildings surrounded the forum. Like the emperor, wealthy Romans lived in large, comfortable houses on the city hills. Number 4 in your notes. Their homes had marble walls, tiled floors, and running water. Houses were built around a courtyard called an atrium, which was open to the sky. The atrium often had a garden. Wealthy Romans also had homes called villas on large farms outside the city. So number 1, you're built on a city so that you could be protected. Number 2, just absolutely beautiful, guys. So if you're looking at this big Roman palace and you're picturing these rooms in here, then you'd have this little atrium here, this open gathering area where you could plant a little garden. Okay, that's life in the city. I'm in the city, I'm doing my business, I'm doing my job. Now the weekend comes. What do I want to do? I want to get away from the city. So I have my villa out in the countryside. Now, that's how we run it today, guys, right? Some wealthy people have their cabins up north that they go to on the weekend. This would be more of a business for them too. I have my huge, large farms that are being worked by slaves, run by my business people, and places I can visit to get away from the city when I wanted to. So the life of the rich and famous, pretty nice. Let's see what the life of the not so rich and famous is like. Romans who were less wealthy worked as shopkeepers or artisans. Most Romans, however, were poor. Many did not even have jobs, while others performed unskilled labor such as delivering goods. Poor Romans lived in crowded, noisy, dirty, the blank in your notes, number 5, neighborhoods, in wooden apartment buildings 6 or 7 stories tall. These buildings often collapsed or caught fire. People tossed garbage into the streets, and thieves prowled the areas at night. So, guys, I look at that and say, nothing has changed with time, has it? The wealthy still live outside of the city in huge, fancy houses in America today. The poor live in apartment buildings, huge stories high, that are dangerous because of thievery, built on top of each other, fall apart, catch on fire. You have these big, huge 6 or 7 stories wooden apartments, and a fire breaks out, and you're just all goners. Okay, back in the day, they obviously didn't have, garbage men that were doing these things. And so what'd you do? You didn't want the smell inside your apartment, so you just literally chucked it out the window. So when we talk about dirty, guys, they're just tossing their garbage into the street. It's disgusting. But it's better out than in the house. But you see the problems that'll come from that. Garbage is going to bring rats. Rats are going to bring disease. People on top of each other are going to spread disease. All problems Roman faced. All problems we need to learn from the Romans and think about today. To gain the support of Rome's poor, political leaders offered bread and circuses. Okay, we'll keep pounding this bread and circus things, guys. We talked about it last chapter. We'll continue to talk about it and the warning that we need to get from it. Too often we do the same thing. I get to a situation in my life where I believe if they promise me something, they can have my vote, and all I want is a short-term temporary cure. You offer me free bread, done. Okay, that didn't get me into a position, right? We have a saying, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime. So too often our government gives a man a fish. No, we want to teach them to fish where they can take care of themselves. On some days, teams of chariot racers competed in the Circus Maximus. What is the Circus Maximus? It's an arena seating more than 150,000 people. That's amazing, guys, that thing's over 2,000 years old, and it's bigger than any stadium we have in America today. On other days, crowds watch gladiators, number 6 in your notes, fight each other to the death or battle wild animals in the stadium, such as a Colosseum. The Colosseum is still standing today, guys. Most gladiators were enslaved people, they were criminals, they were prisoners of war, or poor people. Romans admired the gladiators' skill and bravery. So Rome had a sweet justice system. Okay, I'm an enslaved person, so I have no rights anyways, but I'm really big and strong. I might be forced to be a gladiator, or I might sign up to be a gladiator because Rome admired the gladiators. This was a chance to get freedom. Criminals. This was a great way to, today we have the death penalty. Hey, criminal, entertain us. You're going to go fight the tiger. And what's going to happen to the criminal? The criminal's going to die. Nope, maybe the criminal wins and kills a tiger. Okay, sweet. And next week when we have the next gladiator challenge, that criminal's back out again. And that criminal wins enough battles, sweet, he gains his freedom. Okay, they did this a lot with prisoners of war. I captured the other team's general. I give him the honor of being a gladiator. You, instead of me just putting you to death on the battlefield, come be a gladiator, right? Even poor people would sign up for it because they might get some fame from it and then come out, if they live through it, guys, with some power. Okay, entertaining, circuses. Nothing has changed, right? You think about that. I don't know about you, I was looking at that like, dude, I would hate to go watch something like that. Let's go watch two people fight each other and kill each other. Rome, that's awful. Okay, let's think about what the #1 selling video games are. Any killing involved in it? Let's think about the action movies we watch. Any killing involved in it, right? Nothing has changed with it besides the fact it's electronics today and not the real deal. And so we make ourselves feel better. We're like, well, we don't do it for real. It's just a video game. I understand that, right? But there's still something in our mind that says, okay, that's entertainment to me, to watch people fight. At the heart of the Roman society was the family. When Rome was a republic, large families were common. Married children often lived in the same house with their parents and other relatives. The father closely watched over his wife and her activities. The law even allowed fathers to sell children into slavery or to have them put to death. In later times, fathers lost some of this power and wives gained some legal rights. Families had fewer children and Romans were more likely to divorce and remarry. Number 7 in your notes. Guys, you do what you want with this paragraph. I know it sounds horrible, like, man, dad, #1, watches over his wife. She has no freedoms. #2, he's going to sell his children into slavery or put them to death. True statements, but I don't want you to think like, my kid lipped off to me, so I say, they disrespect me, kill them. This was just motivated by fear kind of things. Parents had ultimate power over their children's lives, and the children understood that. Today, it's kind of the exact opposite, isn't it? Children today are like, dude, parents, what are you going to do to me? You can't do anything to me, right? We kind of get that little tough guy attitude going on, and that's what happened over time. Now, what I want you to keep in mind as we go through this chapter, guys, is we are talking about Rome falling apart. And there's a lot of people who have studied Rome and look at these last few sentences and say, this is one big reason Rome fell apart. Children lost respect for their parents. 1, parents lost respect for marriage. They got divorced and remarried all the time. Now, I'm trying to skip over this sentence with my mouse. There's nothing wrong with the wives gaining some legal rights. That is definitely not a reason Rome fell apart at all. But what I'm trying to go to, guys, is you think about divorce and remarrying in America today. Happens all the time. You think about respect for children to their parents. If you ask me, it's going downhill. I think if you asked you, it's going downhill, right? And so we can look at Rome, guys, and we can learn a lot from Rome because America's walking the same path. Tragically, Rome is not a superpower today. And so there's lessons to learn, and I'm going to try to point those lessons out as we go through that to say, hey, my professional opinion, and it's my opinion only, guys. You're allowed your own opinion. My opinion is America's on the decline, and if we don't learn some very important lessons pretty soon, we're going to be like the Roman Empire. We're going to split apart, fall apart, or get conquered. Fathers in upper-class families were responsible for the education of their children. When they were young, wealthy boys and girls learned from private lessons at home. As they grew older, boys from wealthy families went to schools where they studied reading, writing, arithmetic, and rhetoric. Rhetoric is public speaking. It's like today we call it debate. Can you talk and win people over? President Obama was very good at rhetoric. He was a great speaker, guys. People enjoyed listening to him, and he naturally won people over to his side. President Trump, definitely not known for rhetoric at all. Older girls continued to study at home. Poorer Romans could not afford to go to school, but some of them learned enough reading, writing, and arithmetic to help them conduct business. That's another blank in your notes, number 8 in your notes, guys. So read, write, do math, just enough to get by. At about the age of 15, a Roman boy celebrated becoming an adult. 9. How did he do that? He would burn his toys as offering to the household gods. So I was thinking about that passage from Paul. When I was a child, I thought like a child, I acted like a child, I was a child. When I became a man, I put childish ways behind me. Okay, I'm a man now. Good. Get rid of childish things. Don't ever go back to them. You burn them up, you can't go back to them. Great example. Then he would put on a white toga. A toga is a loose-fitting robe that the Roman men wore. Once he became an adult, a man might work at his family's business, join the army, get a job in the government. Men tended to marry later, but women usually married around the age of 14. Once they married, Roman women were then considered adults. Okay, you just see their customs, guys, and this is where we get our belief about Mary and Joseph in the Bible. We believe Joseph was probably 30 and Mary was probably 14. And you and I probably go, ew, that's gross. That's such a big, huge age gap. But why they had it is, one, we're going to marry girls younger because they're stronger. They're healthy, right? I walk around hobbling on bad knees and bad ankles and I hurt all over because I'm old, right? You guys don't have that problem. You can run all day, do all that good stuff. And so, guys, childbirth killed a ton of women. And so the younger we could marry them off, the better chance they had of surviving childbirth. Why did we wait for guys to be older? Because we wanted them to be established. You're respected by society, you have a job, you have a house, you have experience, go for it, okay? And so there's usually that big age gap there. That obviously no age is given for Mary and Joseph in the Bible, but as we look at history around and what we have written down, that's what makes us think that. Women in early Rome were not full citizens and had few rights. They had a strong influence on their families, however. They often advised their husbands in private. Number 10 in your notes. When Rome was an empire, the wives of emperors began to exercise more power. For example, while the Emperor Septimius fought rebels in distant parts of the empire, the Empress, Julia Domna, administered or was in charge of political affairs in Rome. So we're going to start to get some powerful women who start to take positions. In other words, husbands off fighting, I'm going to run Rome. And we start to say, man, these women really, we should maybe start to trust them more, give them the power to do those things. They always had power, guys, but it was always in private. In other words, there was a great respect between husbands and wives. The husbands had all the political power. They had all the rights. But they would go home and they'd say, all right, honey, here's what we talked about in the forum today. What do you think? And the wife would say, well, here's what I think we should do. And then make decisions off that. The freedoms a Roman woman enjoyed depended on her husband's wealth and position. By the AD 100s, wealthy women had more independence. They could own land, run businesses, and sell property. Okay, you're number 11 in your notes. So it's all changing over time, guys. They managed the household while enslaved people did the housework. This left women free to study literature, art, and fashion. Outside the home, they could go to the theater and attend races and fights, but they had to sit in areas separate from men. Ah, the good old divisions based on the genders, right? Women with less money had less freedom. They spent their time doing housework or helping their husbands and family run shops. They were allowed to leave home to shop, visit friends, worship at temples, or go to the baths. A few women worked independently outside the home. Some served as priestesses, carrying out religious rituals in temples, while others worked as hairdressers and even doctors. So you get some of the things, guys, more money, more power, right? And so we understand that. 12 women with less money had usually worked alongside their husbands, right? Had less freedoms. Slavery was a part of the Roman life from early times. The use of slave labor grew, however. As Rome acquired more territory, Roman soldiers took conquered people as prisoners. These captives were brought to Rome and sold into slavery. By 100 BC, guys, so we just went back in time 200 years, about 40% of the people in Italy were enslaved. Number 13 in your notes. Enslaved people performed many different jobs. They worked in homes and harvested crops. They mined ore and helped build roads, bridges, 14 in your notes, and aqueducts. Aqueducts is what hauls water through the empire. Many enslaved Greeks, though, were well educated. They served as teachers, doctors, and artisans. So just like we say, hey, the difference in money made life very different for women, the difference in your education and your position made life very different for slaves. Some would work in a home. Some would work in the ore mines. Some are going to have horrible lives. Some are actually going to serve as teachers, doctors, and artisans because you lost the battle, but you're well educated. So slaves' life varied big time based on what position they might have had. Okay? For most enslaved people, life was miserable. They were often forced to work long hours and could be sold at any time. They were punished severely for poor work or for running away. To escape their hardships, enslaved people often rebelled. Number 15 in your notes. Let's talk about one of those rebellions. In 73 BC, a gladiator named Spartacus, number 16 in your notes, led a slave rebellion. As Spartacus and his forces moved through Italy, their numbers swelled to 70,000. Spartacus planned to reach the Alps. From there, the enslaved people could return to their homelands. The Roman army, however, crushed the revolt. Spartacus was killed in battle, and 6,000 of his followers were crucified. They were put to death by being nailed to a cross. So guys, you obviously know what crucifixion is for Jesus, but it was definitely a common thing that they did in the Roman Empire. So Rome crushes this, but it wakes them up to, we need to think about how we're doing slaves, because he led a rebellion. Instantly all the slaves started to jump him, and you have a huge force. We need to be careful. Almost half, 2/5 of the people were enslaved and hate their lives. They're willing to fight for their freedom, because for most slave people says, hey, let's fight. What's the worst that can happen to me? You get killed. And for many slaves, they would say, dying might be better than working the life I have right now, right? And so they were willing to do that. Okay, then they crucified him, guys. And when you crucified, you got to understand something. Jesus' crucifixion was a little bit different, because at the end of Jesus' crucifixion, they took his body down and buried him. Most of the time, Romans just left them up there. So you just crucified them and you left the bodies up there. They would die, the birds would eat them until they fell off the cross. We always talk about the notice that was put above Jesus. King of the Jews, right? We did that too. Tried to rebel. And so if I'm a slave, I look at this guy up there being crucified, taking him probably 24 to 36 hours to slowly die, and say, I don't want that, maybe I shouldn't rebel. Romans believed that gods controlled all parts of life. Household spirits protected the home and the family. Gods protected the entire empire. Greek gods and goddesses were given Roman names. For example, Zeus becomes Jupiter, the sky god. Aphrodite becomes Venus, the goddess of love and beauty. Beginning with Augustus, the emperors were officially made gods by the Roman Senate. Number 17 in your notes. So guys, you can see all our planets here as we switch from Greek mythology to Roman mythology. Now we start to get our emperors recognized as a god. Romans worshiped their gods and goddesses by praying and offering goods to them. Every Roman home included an altar, number 18 in your notes, for its household gods. At altars, the head of the family made offerings of incense, wine, honey, and the family meal. Government officials made offerings in temples where important gods and goddesses of Rome were honored. Temples were open to all people. The Romans also adapted the ideas of Greek philosophy, such as the philosophy of Stoicism. For the Greeks, Stoicism was about finding happiness through reason. Remember when we studied this first time? Control your emotions. Romans, however, believed Stoicism was about learning to live in a practical way. Stoic philosophers urged people to participate in public affairs, do their civic duty, number 19 in your notes, and to treat conquered people well. So guys, that's practical in my mind. Be involved, do what's right, and treat people right, right? What was the other philosophy besides Stoicism? Epicureanism. Eat, drink, and be merry. Think only about yourself and having a good time. That does not make a country run, right? As the empire grew, Rome came into contact with people who practiced different religions. Rome allowed these people to practice their religions if they did not threaten the government. Okay, one of those religions is going to be Christianity, guys. Were Christians allowed to practice it? No. Why? You're up here. Beginning with Augustus, emperors were officially made gods. So I had to worship Augustus as a god. Christians would say, I can't do that. There is only one God. Rome says, then you are threatening our government and you need to go. So you understand why Christianity was rejected, which maybe is what you want for extra credit up here. Christianity wouldn't recognize the emperor as a god. So Rome hated them. So I would just write up here, emperor is not God. And then you knew why why we're going to study how Christianity got persecuted, and then why at the beginning, guys, we talked about Constantine being so important. Why? Because he allowed Christianity for one of the first times, changed everything. Okay, we got started a little long today. Good stuff as we work through Rome and start to apply it into our life. There's a lot that we can learn for it, and we can pick it up next week. Have a great weekend.